The myth of the giant leap. Most people are waiting for the right moment, the perfect plan, the big break that will change everything overnight. They watch success stories on social media. The entrepreneur who made $1 million in a year, the athlete who rose to glory from nothing. And they quietly tell themselves, that is not for me. I am not built that way. But here's the truth no one talks about. Every single one of those stories started with something almost invisible. A tiny decision, a small shift, a single step taken when no one was watching. This book is about that step. And the next one, and the one after that. The 1% rule is not a magic formula. It is a philosophy, one that says you do not need to transform your life overnight. You simply need to get 1% better every single day. Not faster, not stronger, not richer, just 1%. And if you do that consistently, the mathematics of progress will take care of everything else. As the legendary investor Warren Buffett once said, someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. The shade does not come from planting a forest. It comes from planting one tree and giving it time. Over the course of this book, we will walk through 7 powerful principles. Each chapter is a different lens, a different dimension of your life where the 1% philosophy can quietly revolutionize who you are. We will talk about habits, mindset, relationships, failure, health, purpose, and the art of showing up even when you do not feel like it. But before we dive in, let me ask you something. Think about where you were 1 year ago. Your habits, your energy, your confidence, your skills. Now ask yourself, if you had committed to improving just 1% each day for the past 365 days, who would you be right now? The answer might surprise you. A 1% daily improvement compounds to approximately 37 times better in a single year. Not 1% better, 37 times better. That is the power sitting inside the small decision you are making right now. The decision to read this book, to begin this journey, to stop waiting for the giant leap and start taking the small step. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The seed you plant in the dark. There is a species of bamboo in China that, after being planted, shows no visible growth for first 5 years. None. The farmer waters it, tends to it, protects it from pests, and yet the ground remains flat and bare. A stranger walking past would think the seed had died. But in year 5, the bamboo shoots up nearly 90 feet in just 6 weeks. So the question is, did the bamboo grow in 6 weeks? Or did it grow over 5 years? The answer, of course, is 5 years. Every day that the farmer watered and tended to what seemed like empty soil, the bamboo was building a root system so deep and so strong that when it finally emerged, nothing could stop it. Your habits are your roots. Most people abandon their new habits in week 2 or 3. Not because a habit is not working, but because they cannot see the results yet. They go to the gym for 10 days and look in the mirror expecting a transformation. They meditate for a week and wonder why their mind still races. They read personal development books and feel frustrated that their life has not changed. But they're in the bamboo phase. And quitting now means they will never see the shoots. As the philosopher Aristotle wrote more than 2,000 years ago, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. He understood something that modern neuroscience has only recently confirmed. The brain physically rewires itself around repeated behavior. The more you do something, the more natural it becomes, until one day it requires almost no effort at all. Think about driving a car. The first time you sat behind the wheel, your hands trembled, your eyes darted in 10 directions at once, and the simple act of changing gears felt like performing surgery. But now, you hold an entire conversation while navigating rush hour traffic without thinking twice. The skill became automatic because you repeated it until your brain built a dedicated neural highway for it. Every habit you want to build works the same way. The discomfort you feel in the early stages is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that your brain is actively constructing something new. Here is the 1% approach to building habits. Do not try to build a perfect habit. Build the smallest possible version of it. Want to start exercising? Do not commit to 1 hour a day. Commit to putting on your workout clothes. That is it. Just get dressed. Because the research shows that once you're dressed, you almost always exercise. The barrier was never the workout. It was the starting. Want to read more? Do not commit to 30 pages a night. Commit to opening the book. 1 page. That is all. Because once you open it, you will usually read far more. The barrier was inertia, not motivation. James Clear, the modern habit researcher, calls these 2-minute rules. But the underlying principle is ancient wisdom. Lower the cost of starting, and the doing will follow. One of the most extraordinary real-life examples of this principle is Jerry Seinfeld, one of the most successful comedians in history. When asked how he became so prolific, he revealed a deceptively simple system. He hung a large calendar on his wall, and every day that he wrote jokes, he drew a red X on that date. His only goal was to never break the chain. He did not focus on whether the jokes were good. He did not focus on fame or money. He focused on the chain. 1 red X, then another, then another. That unbroken chain, repeated long enough, made him one of the greatest comedians who ever lived. Your challenge this week: choose one habit. Make it laughably small. Do it every day at the same time, in the same place. Do not judge the quality. Do not measure the results. Just plant the seed and water it. You are in the bamboo phase. Your roots are growing. The shoots are coming. Chapter 2. The story you tell yourself. In 1954, the world believed it was physically impossible for a human being to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Doctors, scientists, and coaches all agreed the human body simply was not built for it. And for 9 years, no one could do it. Then on May 6th of that year, a 25-year-old medical student named Roger Bannister laced up his shoes on a track in Oxford, England, and ran a mile in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds. The 4-minute barrier was broken. What happened next is the truly remarkable part. Within the next 12 months, 16 other athletes also broke the 4-minute mile. Today, it is a standard for competitive middle-distance runners. Nothing about the human body changed between 1953 and 1955. The only thing that changed was the belief that it was possible. The story had changed, and when the story changed, so did the result. This is the most underestimated force in human achievement. The narrative you carry about yourself, not your intelligence, not your resources, not your circumstances. The story you tell yourself about what you are capable of is the single greatest predictor of what you will achieve. Dr. Carol Dweck, a psychologist at Stanford University, spent decades studying the difference between people who thrived under challenge and people who collapsed. What she found was startling in its simplicity. The high achievers had what she called a growth mindset. They believed that their abilities could be developed through dedication and hard work. The underachievers had a fixed mindset. They believed their qualities were carved in stone, given them at birth, and unable to change. The fixed mindset person hears criticism and thinks, I am not good enough. The growth mindset person hears the same criticism and thinks, I am not good enough yet. That 3-letter word, yet, is one of the most powerful words in the human vocabulary. Think about a skill you currently believe you are bad at. Maybe it is speaking in front of people. Maybe it is managing money. Maybe it is being consistent. Now say this out loud. I am not good at that yet. Feel the difference? The word yet does not deny where you are. It simply refuses to accept that where you are is where you must stay. Muhammad Ali, widely regarded as the greatest boxer of all time, understood this deeply. Long before he became champion, before the world knew his name, he stood in front of mirrors and told himself, I am the greatest. People laughed. Reporters rolled their eyes. But Ali understood something most people never grasp. Your mind cannot clearly distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is real. Repeated enough, the declaration became a belief. The belief became a behavior. The behavior became a legacy. Now, this is not simply about positive thinking, the kind of motivational fluff that says, just believe and everything will happen. The mindset shift we are talking about here must be paired with action. Ali did not just say he was the greatest. He trained like no one had ever trained before. The belief and the work fed each other. Here's a practical exercise rooted in neuroscience. For the next 30 days, every time you catch yourself saying, I can't do this, or I'm not that kind of person, pause and reframe it. Ask yourself, what would I need to do to become someone who can do this? You are not lying to yourself. You are simply choosing a story that serves your growth over one that protects your comfort. Because here's a hard truth. The story you tell yourself is a choice. You may not have chosen the events of your past. You may not have chosen your starting conditions. But every morning you wake up, you choose how to interpret them. You can be the person to whom things happened, or you can be the person who is building something from what happened. Roger Bannister did not just break a physical barrier on that May afternoon in Oxford. He broke a mental one. And in doing so, he freed 16 others to follow. What barrier are you keeping alive by believing it cannot be broken? Chapter 3. The People Who Shape You. In 1970, a researcher at Stanford University conducted an experiment that would change the way scientists thought about human behavior. He placed 5 crabs in a bucket. As one crab began climbing toward the top, the others instinctively reached up and pulled it back down, not out of malice, simply because it was what crabs do. No crab ever escaped that bucket. Decades later, sociologists would call this phenomenon crab mentality, the pattern in which people who are not progressing unconsciously work to pull back those who are. You have seen it, the friend who mocks your ambitions, the family member who reminds you of all the times you have failed, the colleague who rolls their eyes when you talk about your goals. They are not evil. They are simply crabs. And staying in that bucket long enough will cost you everything. Jim Rohn, one of the most influential personal development thinkers of the 20th century, made an observation that has been repeated millions of times since. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but the research behind it is sobering. Studies in behavioral economics, social psychology, and even epidemiology have shown that human behavior is massively contagious. Your income, your fitness level, your emotional well-being, your ambitions. All of these are significantly influenced by the people you surround yourself with. Nicholas Christakis, a sociologist at Harvard University, demonstrated through large-scale data studies that obesity spreads through social networks, not through shared meals or genetics, through proximity and social norms. When the people around you treat excess weight as normal, your brain begins to calibrate your own acceptable range upward. The same is true for wealth, for addiction, for ambition. Your social environment is constantly calibrating your sense of what is possible and what is normal, and you absorb it without realizing. Think about the last 5 conversations you had. Did those conversations challenge you? Did they inspire you toward growth? Did they leave you energized and thinking bigger? Or did they drag you into gossip, complaint, and stagnation? Now think about the 5 people you interact with most. Are they living the kind of life you want to build? Are they moving forward? Are they builders of something? A business, a skill, a family, a craft? Or are they mostly focused on what is wrong with the world, what is unfair, and what other people are doing? This is not about judging others or becoming cold to the people you love. It is about being intentional with one of the most precious and finite resources you have, your attention and your time. Oprah Winfrey, who grew up in poverty and abuse and rose to become one of the most influential women in human history, has spoken openly about the moment she understood this principle. She made a deliberate decision, sometimes a painful one, to limit her proximity to people who drained her energy and expand her exposure to people who challenge her to rise. She called it building a life that does not require vacation from. But here's the critical nuance. You do not have to abandon every person who is not already successful. What matters is the direction people are moving in, not the speed. A friend who is genuinely trying, who takes responsibility, who is hungry to grow, that friend is worth 10 polished professionals who have stopped pushing. So, how do you expand your circle when you feel stuck and want to hold you back? Start by consuming the thinking of the people you want to become. Books, podcasts, interviews, documentaries. For most of human history, access to the minds of great thinkers was limited to the wealthy and the geographically lucky. Today, you can spend 30 minutes each morning absorbing philosophy of the most extraordinary people who have ever lived. That is a revolution. Then, wherever possible, begin inserting yourself into rooms, physical or virtual, where people are doing what you want to do, communities workshops, online groups, events. Say yes to the uncomfortable invitation. Reach out to someone whose work you admire. Most people never do this, so the threshold for standing out is low. You cannot always choose your starting environment, but you can choose one small step at a time, which direction to move in. Choose carefully. The people around you are not just witnesses to your journey. They are actively shaping it. Chapter 4. The Gift Inside the Failure. In 1979, a 23-year-old dropout walked into a venture capital meeting in Silicon Valley with a product demonstration that famously crashed and glitched in front of the investors. The demonstration failed. The investors were unimpressed. He left the building without the funding. His name was Steve Jobs. The product was the Apple Lisa. 11 years later, after being fired from his own company, after watching his new venture nearly go bankrupt, after more failures than most people could endure, Jobs returned to Apple and led the creation of the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad. Products that permanently changed the texture of human civilization. The failure was not a detour from the story. The failure was the story. We live in a culture obsessed with the highlight reel, the win, the launch, the success, the before and after photo. We see the summit and romanticize it, but we carefully edit out the years of stumbling, falling, bleeding, and getting back up that made reaching the summit possible at all. This editing does enormous damage, because when you inevitably face your own failures, and you experience them not as a normal part of progress, but as evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You are just on a part of the path that nobody photographs. Thomas Edison, perhaps the most prolific inventor in history, attempted more than 10,000 prototypes before creating a working light bulb. When a reporter asked him how it felt to have failed 10,000 times, Edison reportedly looked at him with genuine puzzlement and said, "I have not failed 10,000 times. I have successfully discovered 10,000 ways that will not work." That reframe is everything. The word failure implies finality, an ending, a verdict. But the truth is that what we call failure is almost always feedback, data about what does not work, delivered in a form that forces us to pay attention. The business that did not launch teaches you the customer problem you misunderstood. The relationship that ended teaches you something about your patterns, your needs, your communication. The exam you did not pass reveals the gaps in your preparation. Every piece of genuine feedback is worth more than 100 pieces of empty encouragement. Michael Jordan, whose name became synonymous with greatness, was cut from his high school basketball team at age 15, devastated. He went home and cried in his room. Then he got up. He practiced with ferocity that his coaches later said they had never witnessed before or since. The failure did not stop him. It clarified him. In his own words, Jordan once reflected, "I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. 26 times. I have been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Notice that he does not say, "despite failing." He says that is why. The failure was a fuel. Here is a practice to rewire your relationship with failure. After any significant setback, sit quietly and ask yourself 3 questions. First, what did this teach me that I could not have learned any other way? Second, what would I do differently, knowing what I know now? Third, what does surviving this tell me about my own resilience? These are not feel-good questions. They are excavation tools. They turn rubble into building material. You will face failures on your path. Some of them will knock the breath out of you. Some will embarrass you. Some will cost you time, money, relationships, or confidence. None of them is the end of the story, unless you decide they are. The difference between the people who eventually succeed and the people who never do is almost never talent, intelligence, or luck. It is willingness. Willingness to fail again, and again, and again, until the failure finally reveals what was hidden beneath it all along. Chapter 5. The Temple You Live In. In ancient Greece, the entrance to the temple at Delphi bore a simple inscription that philosophers considered the highest wisdom of their age. 2 words, "Know thyself." And for the Greeks, knowing oneself was inseparable from tending to oneself. Body, mind, and spirit were understood as a single, inseparable system. We have largely forgotten this. In the modern world, we treat the body as a vehicle for the mind, a machine we drive until it breaks down, fueling it with whatever is cheapest and fastest, sleeping when we absolutely must, and moving only when forced to. We live from the neck up, and then wonder why we feel so depleted, so foggy, so unmotivated. But here's what the science is now telling us with increasing clarity. Your body is not the vehicle for your mind. It is the foundation. The quality of your sleep determines the quality of your thinking. The consistency of your movement shapes your emotional baseline. The food you eat is literally the raw material from which your brain cells are built and repaired. You cannot build an extraordinary life from an exhausted, depleted physical foundation. Matthew Walker, a neuroscientist and sleep researcher at the University of California, Berkeley, spent decades studying what happens to human beings when they are sleep-deprived. His findings were alarming. After just one night of 6 hours of sleep, not 4, not 2, but 6, measurable declines appear in memory, decision-making, emotional regulation, and immune function. After 2 weeks of sleeping 6 hours per night, subjects performed as poorly on cognitive tests as people who had stayed awake for a full 24 hours, and most of them did not even notice the decline. They were functioning poorly, and they were blind to it. Sleep is not laziness. Sleep is the maintenance cycle without which the machine cannot function at its best. Now let us talk about movement. The relationship between physical exercise and mental performance is one of the most robustly demonstrated connections in all of neuroscience. Regular aerobic exercise increases the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which researchers have called miracle growth for the brain. It stimulates the growth of new neurons, improves memory, reduces anxiety, sharpens focus, and has been shown in multiple studies to be as effective as antidepressants for mild to moderate depression. You do not need to train like an Olympic athlete. The research consistently shows that 30 minutes of brisk walking, 5 times a week, is enough to produce these effects. The body does not require punishment. It requires consistent, regular movement. Serena Williams, who has been called the greatest tennis player in history regardless of gender, has spoken at length about the role of physical discipline in her mental dominance on the court. Her preparation was never just about technique and strength. It was about building a body so well-conditioned that her mind could operate freely under pressure without the noise of fatigue interfering with her decisions. In her words, "I really think a champion is defined not by their wins, but by how they can recover when they fall." Recovery. That word is key. Physical recovery, sleep, rest, nutrition, is not the opposite of performance. It is what makes sustained performance possible. Here is the 1% approach to physical well-being. Do not try to overhaul your entire lifestyle this week. Pick one variable. Choose sleep, or movement, or water. Improve just that one thing by 1%. Go to bed 15 minutes earlier. Walk around the block once after dinner. Drink 1 extra glass of water in the morning. These are not dramatic changes. That is the point. Dramatic changes require dramatic motivation, and motivation is unreliable. Small changes only require the smallest decision, but stacked day after day, they compound into a body, and therefore mind, that is fundamentally different from the one you have today. Your body is a house your dreams live in. Tend to it accordingly. Chapter 6. The North Star Principle. In the age of exploration, before GPS, before radar, before any of the instruments we now take for granted, sailors navigating the open ocean had one reliable fixed point in the night sky, the North Star. Unlike every other celestial body, Polaris sits almost perfectly aligned with the Earth's axis of rotation. While everything else in the sky wheels and shifts, the North Star stays put. And for centuries, it was the difference between arriving at the destination and being lost at sea. Purpose is your North Star. Most people do not have one. They have preferences and desires and vague wishes about how their life should look, but they do not have a clear, burning sense of why they are here and what they are meant to build. And so they drift, busy, often productive, sometimes successful, but without that deep sense of alignment that makes even the hard days feel meaningful. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. During 3 years in the Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz, he observed something that changed his understanding of human psychology forever. He noticed that the prisoners who survived the unimaginable conditions were not always the physically strongest. They were the ones who had a reason to survive, a person waiting for them, a book they needed to write, a child they needed to return to. Purpose, Frankl concluded, was not a luxury of comfortable living. It was a basic human need, as fundamental as food and water. And in his landmark work published after liberation, he wrote the words that have guided millions of readers since. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. That sentence contains more practical wisdom than most entire shelves of self-help books. When you have a clear why, a reason that goes beyond comfort, money, and approval, the how becomes negotiable. Obstacles become problems to solve rather than reasons to stop. Failures become information rather than verdicts. The discomfort of early mornings, difficult conversations, and slow progress all become acceptable because they are in service of something that matters deeply to you. Without the why, even the easiest path feels too hard. Finding your purpose is not a dramatic, lightning bolt revelation. For most people, it is a slow discovery, a pattern that emerges as you pay careful attention to what consistently makes you feel most alive, most useful, most like yourself. Pay attention to the activities that make you lose track of time, not because they're easy. Sometimes the most purposeful work is the hardest we do, but because they feel meaningful. Pay attention to the problems in the world that make you angry. Anger, properly directed, is often a compass pointing toward your purpose. Pay attention to the kind of help that others naturally seek from you, even when you have not advertised a skill. These are the clues. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, 27 years on Robben Island, breaking rocks, denied the most basic dignities. By any ordinary measure, those years should have been the end of his story. Instead, when he walked out of that prison in 1990 at the age of 71, he walked out with more moral authority and more sense of purpose than almost anyone on earth. When asked how he survived, Mandela spoke with clarity that those years had given him. Stripped of everything else, comfort, freedom, recognition, he had been left alone with his purpose, and it had not abandoned him, as he later reflected. Always seems impossible until it's done. He knew his North Star, and even the darkest night could not extinguish it. Here is a practice. Take 30 uninterrupted minutes this week and write, without editing, the answer to this question. If I knew I could not fail and money was not a consideration, what would I spend my life building? Do not think too hard. Do not be practical. Just write. You are looking for the thread, the pattern beneath the pattern, the thing that has been calling you, perhaps for years, in a voice just quiet enough to ignore. Stop ignoring it. Your North Star is not somewhere out there waiting to be discovered. It is inside you, waiting to be acknowledged. Chapter 7. The R Showing Up. There is a cathedral in Barcelona, Spain, called the Sagrada Familia. It is one of the most extraordinary structures ever conceived by the human mind. A towering, organic, impossibly intricate vision of stone and light that seems to grow out of the earth like a living thing. It has been under construction for over 140 years. Its architect, Antoni Gaudí, began work on it in 1883. He knew he would not live to see it completed. He died in 1926, struck by a tram, with the cathedral only partially built. But he had prepared detailed plans, models, and documentation so meticulous that the construction has continued long after his death, generation by generation, block by block. Gaudí once said something remarkable about his life's work. My client is not in a hurry. He meant God, but the principle applies to every great endeavor. The things worth building are not in a hurry. They require time. They require patience. Above all, they require the willingness to show up day after day, even when the end feels impossibly far away. Consistency is not glamorous. It does not make good content for social media. It does not produce the dramatic before and after moments that go viral. Consistency is a 5:30 a.m. alarm, the one more page, the practice when no one is watching, the decision to continue when stopping would be so much easier. It is also, without question, the single greatest differentiator between the people who build extraordinary lives and the people who do not. Not talent, not intelligence, not opportunity. Consistency. Consider the writing career of Stephen King. one of the most successful authors in history. He has published more than 65 novels and more than 200 short stories. What is his secret? He writes a minimum of 2,000 words every single day, including his birthday, Christmas, and the day after his son nearly died in a medical emergency. He writes every day, not when inspired, not when he feels like it. Every day. In his memoir about the craft, King writes, "Amateurs sit and wait for inspiration. The rest of us just get up and go to work." This is not about being robotic or ignoring the rhythms of your humanity. It is about understanding that action generates energy, not the other way around. You do not wait until you feel motivated to begin. You begin, and the motivation follows. Psychologists call this the action-motivation loop, the empirical finding that taking even the smallest step toward a goal generates a small sense of progress, which generates a small dose of motivation, which makes the next step easier. The engine does not start itself. You have to crank it, but once it starts, it runs. Consider also Florence Griffith Joyner, FloJo, who became the fastest woman in history at the 1988 Seoul Olympics, setting world records that stood for over 30 years. What drove that extraordinary achievement? In interviews, she always came back to the same answer: the years of daily practice that no one saw, the early mornings, the repetitions, the discipline on the days when everything hurt and nothing was working. The records did not come from the race. They came from the thousands of races before the race, run in obscurity, in training, before any of the world knew her name. Your 1% daily improvement is your training run. Your daily habit is your brick on the Sagrada Familia. Your consistent action, taken today when no one is watching and the results are not yet visible, is the thing that will one day look like overnight success from the outside. And when that day comes, and it will come if you do not quit, people will marvel at how quickly things change for you. They will call you lucky. They will wonder what your secret is. And you will smile because you will know that there was no secret. There was only the 5:30 a.m. alarm. One more page. The daily rep. There was only the art showing up. Day after day. Season after season. Whether the results were visible yet or not. That is the 1% rule in its purest form. Not a burst of effort. Not a moment of inspiration. Not a single transformative decision. Just 1% better than yesterday. Every single day. Until the bamboo shoots up. Conclusion. The long game. You have now walked through 7 principles, 7 different angles on the same essential truth. That extraordinary lives are not built in moments of extraordinary effort. They are built in the accumulation of ordinary moments, each made slightly better than the one before. You have learned that habits are roots that grow in darkness before they ever become visible. That the story you tell yourself is a choice you make every morning. That the people around you are shaping you, whether you are aware of it or not. That failure is not the opposite of success. It is a part of the process. That the body you live in is a foundation, not the vehicle, of everything you want to achieve. That purpose is not found. It is acknowledged in the patterns that have always been present. And that consistency, showing up every day, whether you feel like it or not, is the quiet superpower that separates the builders from the wishers. These are not new ideas. Fragments of them appear in the wisdom traditions of every civilization that has ever sought to understand how human beings can live well. What makes them powerful is not their novelty. It is what happens when you actually live them. As Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote in the 19th century, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." Ideas do not change lives. Application does. So here is your final challenge, the one that matters more than any other. Choose one principle from this book, just one, and beginning tomorrow, apply it, not perfectly, not heroically, just consistently, 1% better. Every day, the mathematics will take care of the rest. The shade is coming. The bamboo is growing. The cathedral is being built. You just need to keep showing up.